welcome to Coproduce Care's Chat for Care. My name is Sophie Chester-Glynn, and for anyone who doesn't know us, we are a non-profit organisation that is made up of people who work in care, people who are passionate about care, volunteers. We also have an apprentice who helps us, and soon we'll be welcoming an intern. So welcome to everyone who is not familiar with us, and we're so glad to have you with us this evening. My name is Sophie Chester-Glynn, and I have two kind of roles. And as most people who know registered managers as the registered managers we have on tonight will know that we often do more than one role. So in one life, I'm a director of a care company, and in this life, I am director of Coproduce Care. And we've been trying to do a lot around opening up the care debate, including starting some petitions, helping people to respond to government consultations, and of course, vlogging, blogging, and now live streaming about social care. So I'm really excited this evening to have with me two fantastic guests, Mark Tops and Jonathon Cunningham. Some of you will know them already, and if you do and you want more people to come and join in this chat, then please share and like this wherever you're watching us, on Facebook, on YouTube, excuse me, hay fever, or if you're watching us on Twitter, because we're also streaming there. Bring more people to the debate. We're going to have a fantastic live stream this evening. We're even going to have some music, live music, bringing us out of the live stream later on. But we're going to be talking about professionalism, pay, and rights for social care workers. And it is great to have people who are leading large organisations like Skills for Care and Care England. And even we've had politicians on this live stream before. But there's nothing like talking to people on the front line who are actually doing the work and seeing how they think social care and the workforce should change, policy should support us, and all of that stuff. So I'm really excited to have both of my guests on this evening. And a quick plug for us and what we do. We're not getting paid for this. We just think it needs to be done. This debate that's opened, that's more than a 10-minute snippet of people's views. We have an hour each time usually. So just support us by clicking on subscribe if you're on YouTube, or if you are watching us on Facebook, then please do go and like our Facebook page and follow us, and that's the way we get more people engaging with the talks and the stuff that we're doing. So anyone who's familiar with our YouTube channel, you'll know that we've got about 50 interviews that we've done now, or 50 videos, some of them snippets of great stuff that we've done on our channel. So please do go out there and support us. So that's enough of me plugging. So I'm going to just let you know what we're going to do this evening. We're going to have Jonathon Cunningham on first, and we're going to talk to him about the work that he does. He is actually ex-army, and he's been involved in the NHS. He's set up Storm Consultancy, has a Facebook group that he runs with thousands of managers and people who work in social care who have joined that, and he's really on his own back, really supporting the sector, advising people and entertaining people every evening at 8 o'clock in the week. Fancy that. So if you don't know much about him, then you're going to find more out this evening. And then after him, we're going to speak to Mark Tops, and he is another fantastic advocate for social care. Not only is he a registered manager of a learning disability service, but he also has set up a petition, which we're going to share the information of in the chat. And we're also we have information of it in the description of this video. And if you haven't signed his petition yet, then stay tuned, listen more, and you'll find out what it's all about. And you'll also get an opportunity to link in and sign it, because we really believe that supporting him in what he's doing and trying to get care workers recognised more is really what we need to be doing from all angles. So some fantastic work he's doing, and we really want to support that. So I'm going to stop babbling. As always, I always give too much of a long intro, I think. One last thing, comments, please. I don't want this just us talking to you or talking at you. Get engaged, give us some fun comments, give it your thoughts, just type them in, and any questions you've got, please do that as well in the comments box and keep it a vibrant discussion. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Jonathon on. Welcome, Jonathon.
Good evening, Sophie. Hello there.
How are you?
Very good, very good. Very excited about tonight, I've got to say.
It is great. You know, I've really wanted so much to have registered managers onto this channel, and it's great to have the big names come on. And you're also a big name, but bit of a celebrity in the registered managers world. But I think it's just so engaging to have people who are, you know, you're in the thick of it. You're talking to registered managers every day across the country. You've got your own organization. It's a family business as well. So you've known nothing else really. So I think it's great to have someone like you on the channel just to talk from that perspective. So maybe for anyone who doesn't know you, I'm sure many will, just give us a bit of an introduction on what you do, where you work, and what your organizations are involved in.
Great, thank you. Love the earrings, I've got to say. They look fantastic. Yeah, I've got several hats, and so I'm the registered manager of Birkdale Park Nursing Home, where I look after 36 gorgeous people. Most of those are end of life, and that's my mum's business. It's my mum owns it, and I'm the registered manager, and that's been a real turnaround. I mean, I started out there. It's our old family home, incidentally. And it just so happens that you go into university, you go into the army after 16 years, and then sort of setting up a business. I ended up back at the family home running my mum's business. And it sort of lost its way several years ago. About 4 years ago, it was great. It requires improvement. We had all sorts of problems trying to get a registered manager. And in the end, I just thought, well, I can't let my mum's business go down the pan. I've got to take over this. And, you know, I've done some amazing stuff in the forces, some real challenges. I tell you what, I've never done anything like being a registered manager, turning a home round. And so I take my hat off to every registered manager. It's the toughest thing I've done in my life. And certainly this COVID thing at the moment is a real test. You know, so it's so that's Birkdale Park. Thoroughly enjoy it. I've got a fantastic team, and I also own and now manage Rosebank Care Home for learning disabilities. So a bit like Mark in the LD world. And again, they're gorgeous people, 17 gorgeous boys and girls, you know, from 40 all the way up to 93. So, you know, we have a lot of fun rocking and rolling. And when we're not doing that, I also run Storm Consultancy, a bit like yourself, a person with many hats. Where we go around and I see the good, the bad, and the indifferent, and see some amazing best practice in lots of different care homes. So that's my world, and then I do the Care Managers Inner Circle, which I set up 3 years ago now, and that's grown now to about 2,600 people, all registered managers. So I'm busy.
You're very busy. I just think it's such a commitment. I thought it was a lot having to do these live streams twice a week, but you're just doing that every night, Monday to Thursdays, 8 o'clock, and you're engaging with people on that Facebook group, which was fantastic. What are the type of things that you talk about in the group?
It's everything and anything. It started, I mean, the group started really. I created the group Ventura sunbed with my wife next to me, and I thought I'm going to set up this group. And I remember saying, she goes, are all these is the vast majority of these people going to be women? And I said, well, yeah, what's the problem with that? And she goes, right, well, we'll see how that goes. And it grew and grew and grew, and initially just really as a place that people could come and support each other, particularly as registered managers. And I say it just grew to 2,600, and of an evening we discuss everything from safety, which we're discussing tonight, to electronification of care plans, all the way through to care leadership. I'm not too sure, Sophie, if we've lost you. Are you still there?
I am still there. Did I disappear for a moment?
Yeah, just briefly. Yeah, that's okay. That's fine.
I'm going nowhere. I am still here. So Yeah, people have to understand that we're not tech experts. We're kind of just learning as we go. So if I do something strange, I just this is what this is life. And if you see an odd child pop up behind me, then yeah, just have to ignore that. Yeah, what I was going to ask you is, what are the issues that are coming up for registered managers, especially at times like now? In the group, you've got 2,500 people that are members of the group. Do you find that there's like a regular theme that comes up when you're talking with people on an evening?
I think the biggest thing, and again, I could talk about all sorts of different themes. The biggest theme undoubtedly is the loneliness. It is the loneliness and the fear that you're doing something wrong, or potentially about to reinvent the wheel. And I think that's where the inner circle allows you to feel at home. You can be honest. It's a safe environment. It's a lovely, warm, friendly place that you can come out, hang out, and just ask those daft questions, because there is no pretense from myself as a know-it-all. I'm not an expert. I don't consider myself a professional. We're just doing our level best and trying to make head or tail of the social curl world, the regulations, the directives which come out. So I'd say that the primary thing is assisting people with this fear of loneliness and the anxiety associated with that. And then the next one then is really just the providers. If they've got fantastic support from their provider, then that's great. You're rocking and rolling, in terms of financial, emotional, leadership support. But a lot of people out there, they might be part of a big group and they still feel themselves part of a number. And it's that support which is lacking. So recently, we started doing the lives as part of the COVID build-in. So these really started sort of in February. As we got into March, it was starting to get a lot more serious. And that's when we then kicked in the lives at 8, as initially as a huddle. And that seemed to work extremely well. Initially, every single night, including weekends, because it was so fast moving. Just providing guidance and leadership to the whole of social care and the registered managers. And it's good. It's gone down well. It's a lovely, safe place. So if you've got any viewers watching, then come along to the Care Managers Inner Circle. Find us on Facebook and come and join our family.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely encourage people to do that. It's where you can kind of just talk about your issues, but also be within a safe community. I think it's really interesting you talk about loneliness as care managers, because I know even now you have this imposter syndrome almost, because you think you're supposed to know all the answers as a care manager. Everyone thinks, right, everyone comes to you, and there isn't any like particular break you can get, because you're always thinking about what you need to do, and you're thrust into this all of a sudden life and death situation within care homes, and it's just really tough. So I think like the inner circle, what you've got going on there is really important, and it's a shame that we don't have anything more standardized that kind of encourages that. But it seems like you've got the right tone. It's not too intense, but it's also dealing with stuff that's helpful, because you talk about CQC as well, don't you? And they're changing, landscape and advice and stuff like that. So that's helpful.
Yeah, and there's a lot of personal development in there. It's not just about people effectively delivering in their workplace. I want people to grow as people. I want them to be better versions of themselves. I want them to be able to cope emotionally with some of the stress and strain which are placed on care managers. And so emotional health, their own physical health, their mental health is incredibly important to us. So there's a lot of advice, so there's the number of tenets, which is, productivity. How can you squeeze the very much out of the day? So there's a lot on technology as well, how we can use technology to really enhance our working day, so we can squeeze more into the working day, how they can get more out of their lives. So eat better, sleep better, exercise more regularly. These are really important tenets. It's not just about CQC and the latest directive, and that's why we talk about music, we talk about the ukuleles. And that's why we don't take ourselves too seriously. We're here to be a nice family. Come along. And one of the nicest things, which was coined, it was several months ago. I remember getting up one day and I said, right, knickers on, let's go. Let's go and face the fight, and let's socks on, knickers on, let's go. And that was coined by, and one of the says, you know, it's almost like battle knickers, isn't it? And that then became one of the biggest strap lines of, you know, in the morning we put our battle knickers on, we go out and we face the fight and the COVID fight. And it became one of the most endearing, and one of the members then found this big thing of bloomers, which then became the backdrop of the Facebook page. So it's great fun, and we don't take things seriously.
Do you know what? That's so true. Because I was looking on your Facebook page, this group today, and I thought, I wonder what this story is about knickers. Like, do you need to pull your knickers up or pull your knickers on or what? So that makes sense now. Battle knickers. I'll remember that. Anytime I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to just go to work today, I just think, put your battle knickers on and get on with it, Sophie. No, that's really great. So someone's been asking here, what has the support been like from local authorities in respective areas? I don't know if you maybe just deal with certain local authorities, or you other people have different experiences from local authorities. It's a bit of a wide question because there's so many.
There's so many, and I'd love to say, you know, there's one. We get stories all the time. You know, people just saying, look, you know, oh, my local authority hasn't even mentioned COVID yet, or my local authority hasn't even mentioned the infection control grant. And you know, can you give advice? All we can do, and I post the advice which comes out from Sefton, really just as a little bit of guidance, just saying, look, this is our local authority, this is what it's guiding. Also, we have a lot of people on the group which are members of much global or wider national forums, both in terms of informal and formal. And so we get a lot of feeds, a lot of formal and informal feeds into the group. But I couldn't really, it's been, you've got some authorities which have been fantastic, some have been shocking. And you know, you just, you know, there's been no common theme, I've got to say. You know, it's they're all so different. Great.
Okay, so I'm going to bring in Mark now. So thank you, Jonathan, for the moment. Don't go anywhere. Get your ukulele ready. Since you mentioned it, I might as well say the music that's playing out is going to come from Jonathan tonight.
Can I get practicing?
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry, there's only a few people watching, it's fine. So yeah, thank you so much for the minute, and I'm going to bring Mark in. See you in a sec.
Yeah, well.
Okay, so that was fantastic. I'm speaking to Jonathan, but before we bring in Mark, I just want to remind you, if you're listening and you haven't subscribed or you haven't liked our page, please do so. We've got the tomorrow night at 6 p.m. rather than 7, we're going to be speaking to the Shadow Minister for Care, Liz Kendall. So if you want to ask her questions, some of the stuff we're going to talk about in a minute, maybe I should put the questions to her, then please do tune in. If you subscribe and all of that jazz, then you'll find out what when that's going to be aired, and you'll be notified as well. So let me bring in Mark. Hi, Mark. How are you today?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you very much. You?
I'm okay. I'm really glad to have you on, because I've been watching all the stuff that you've been getting up to, and it's just incredible. And you've got so much traction, especially with the petition. And you've got, I think, over 100,000 signatures, which is incredible. But before we come on to that, can you just talk about yourself, what you do as a registered manager at the moment, and how you maybe got into doing a registered manager's job?
Yeah, so I manage a 13-bed learning disability and mental health service. I started in care when I was 17 years old. I volunteered at, it was a learning disability service, and I deferred from going to university, and unfortunately I did witness abuse, which went to court. But I think in hindsight, it really embedded some values into me. And I remember when I came out of that courtroom, I remember saying that I wanted to manage somewhere that I was proud and that I knew was delivering amazing care. And I left that company a couple of years later, moved into elderly care, which led me into managing reablements. And then I moved into domiciliary care and then back into learning disabilities. And every role I've had, regardless of whoever I'm looking after, I've always remembered those values, that we're here to make a difference and we're here to care for somebody and just stamp out any kind of abuse that is going on. And I moved into learning disabilities after probably about 6-7 years of being out of it, because I knew times had changed, and it has, compared to when I was 17 years old. We've got a lot more personalised support, but I think sadly care workers still aren't seen as, and I think that's what stemmed me on to creating the petition, because I want to make change. I want social care to be an industry to go and work in, and I want care workers to get the recognition that they deserve.
Absolutely. And I think that's fantastic what you're doing, because I find that within social care, people are getting so frustrated with, I started this up because I felt like last year I felt that social care didn't have a proper voice. It was all about healthcare. And you've done what you're doing because you felt, again, similar, I presume. So talk to us about the petition and what it is, and how you've managed to get so much traction on it already.
Yeah, so I started the petition really just because out of frustration, and I think more so once we went into lockdown, we saw the NHS getting a lot of recognition, which they rightly deserve, but then we didn't see that kind of return for care workers. So we saw kind of shops opening for specific time slots for the NHS, discounts for NHS workers, and nothing really for social care. And I think that's when the petition kind of took off. I think, we've got a workforce that is looking after those with learning disabilities, elderly, dementia, end of life. It's not just care, it's managing people's well-being, their health, their fitness. And, it is a challenging job at times. And it's not a job where at the end of the day, you leave, you shut the door and you go home. You're continuously thinking about your residents or the people that you're supporting. And, I know for me, and I know like many other care workers, they'll be out in the supermarket or they'll be in the shops with families, and you'll see something and you'll think, oh, I know so-and-so would like that. And you're always reminded of your residents and the ones that you care for. And it's that emotional tie as well that it has. They're not, they're not just residents. They become more like family and friends.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some tweets and some pictures here to share, so you might need to talk me through these. So this is about the petition. So 103,000, well, nearly 104,000 people have signed it. So the petition obviously is so popular because you've hit the nail on the head. You've really addressed something that people feel passionate about. And we will have information on how to sign that as well, if you're interested in doing that. So people, please do go ahead. But also I'm going to just bring up some more points here. So again, it's something similar to what Jonathon was talking about in terms of well-being, mental health, taking time for yourself, and just giving registered managers that time, and even care workers, to just breathe in this time, because it's just so full on. And again, this is more about you. So this is a second petition that you did, or rather the first, and that was trying to get testing for care homes looking after people with learning disabilities. So again, that was where we were left behind until people like yourselves and other people just kept campaigning about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I think it was very clear in the early days that those with learning disabilities just weren't eligible for testing. And it wasn't more about having a test or not having a test as much as a lot of I did and my staff wanted it. It was more about their rights. Just because they're in a learning disability home shouldn't mean that they shouldn't be eligible for a test. And I kind of think a lot of those people with learning disabilities didn't choose to live in a care home. They were placed there by the local authorities, and we shouldn't be taking away their rights. And that's what started me with that petition, more about highlighting the fact that in 2020, there's still such a discrimination against people with learning disabilities.
Yeah, so there's kind of two sides to what you're looking at: the workforce, which we'll talk about with Jonathon in a while, but also the rights of people that we look after, and thinking about that. And we talked about another conversation how, in terms of people with learning disabilities, sometimes it can be a bit anxious seeing a lot of your staff who don't normally wear even uniforms suddenly turn up in a mask, and you had a different idea of trying to introduce the idea of mask wearing in the home. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so we were very fortunate that we had a good supply of masks, and we're always thinking outside the box. And I know we have the CQC there to regulate us, and it's kind of everything's in a box and tick sheet. But when it came to the masks, I kind of thought, well, why don't we just, if they're worried about seeing staff in masks, why don't we just give them one? They can wear it, they can put it on their teddies, on their dolls. Got one gentleman who loves Minions, and we just put them on the Minions, and it really just helped break that barrier down between one day just being like I'm dressed now to the next day in aprons, masks, shields. And yeah, I found that really helped, just being able for them to be able to touch it. And even now when I walk into the building, first thing I do is put on my mask, sanitize my hands, and quite often they're there waiting for me to get in at 9 o'clock. And I'll say to them, do you want a mask? The majority of the time they don't want one, but the offer's there if they did want one.
That's really good. That's full integration. It's like, it's making it fun, even though it's very unnatural thing to have to do, especially in that type of service, which is very homely, and a lot smaller than the larger care homes for older people. So thanks for letting us in on that. There's another slide, and you might need to talk me through this one as well. So is this connected to the organisation you work with?
Yes, so that's our webpage for the company.
Great, okay. So some awards there as well. So, you're obviously doing a very good job. So in terms of the workforce, what's your ideas around what we need to achieve in terms of recognising the workforce?
I think for me, a lot of people outside of the industry associate professionalism with your pay. I think we see those working in supermarkets, bin men, they're all classed as unskilled, even though a lot of the jobs that they're doing aren't unskilled, and a lot of them aren't jobs that particularly people might want to do. And I do think pay comes into it. And I know the NHS has a tier system and grades with regards to how much people are paid. And I don't know whether that would be something that works within the social care industry. And it's something that I've looked into for my organisation at least. But I think we also need, like ministers and people higher up talking about social care. And we've got a lot of recruitment campaigns going on at the moment, but unless people are talking about it and, those with lived experiences have worked in care, I don't think much is going to unfortunately change. And, people like Helen Watley, when I know you've had her on here, just using that platform that they've got to, just sell care as an industry to work in. I mean, I know for my role, normally, obviously, outside of the pandemic, we'd be down on the beach, having a picnic, going bowling or swimming or to the cinema. And, how many jobs would you be able to do that? And, just getting a resident, jumping in the car and going anywhere that they want to go, and being paid to do it. That's not, to me, that's not a job. That's just something that we would all do day in, day out. And I think we need to focus on those, those sides of care. But equally, like an elderly home, there's so many in-house activities going on, and bingo and singing and dancing, and they're such fun places to work. But I don't think we ever sell that enough, working in social care, and I don't think people talk about it enough.
I absolutely agree. And what I find, it's very cliched when you see an advert for social care, you see somebody in a blue uniform leaning over somebody, an older person in a chair, and really it doesn't represent, like you say, the variety and nuances that there are within social care. And I think there's definitely, I've got my own views about why it isn't promoted in a different way. I think maybe it's because people like ministers just have never had to engage. It's been outsourced, social care. So they've never really had to engage with social care, and they don't really understand what it's all about. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, no, I do. And I don't know, I think they need to speak to a lot more providers and managers that are working in the industry. And, we've got some big players in the industry and those that have got a lot of services, and they could involve them in that decision-making process. And I think back to kind of the PPE, there's going to be so many learning disability services out there that really struggled. And I've got a gentleman that we support who's deaf. So wearing a mask across your face has been at times a nightmare to try and communicate, because you can't lip read, you can't gauge facial expressions. And I think if they'd had that earlier conversation, the guidance that came out yesterday could have come out weeks ago and probably have prevented so much anxiety for the residents that we support.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm just looking at a few questions, comments that have come up while you've been speaking. One person again asked about local authorities and funding, and they're talking about, you know, how you're getting over the barrier with some local authorities who are not increasing yearly increments and not giving yearly increases. Obviously, we're in COVID time, so it's slightly different. But yeah, they're just talking about, you know, paying that catch-22 when you want to pay more, but you're only paid enough to just pay people just above the minimum wage because of those restrictions on funding. Are you finding the same frustrations?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would love to pay my staff more. And I think, you know, going back to some of the larger organisations, you know, they've got so many managers, so many directors, and, you know, we're probably paying them a lot more money than the care workers that are there doing the hands-on job. And I think as, you know, managers of care services, directors, we need to be pushing back on the local authority. And a lot of the time they're given the money and it just never comes down to the front line, which means that we can't then pass it on to the care workers. I mean, I'm happy to, obviously, with the petitions and everything, and, you know, I'm happy to challenge my local authority. And I sometimes think that if a number of managers within that area get together, we could then make more movement, because I think the council just play us off against one another. And I definitely found that in domiciliary care, I was at the time charging a lot more per hour than a lot of the other companies, but then they would use that against me and say, well, we'll just go to X company because they're £5 an hour cheaper. But I mean, my argument was always like, well, you can go to another company, but they're never going to give you the care that I'm going to offer. And a lot of the time they would go and then they would end up with us anyway. But I do think if managers got together, and I know I'm in a WhatsApp group of a lot of local managers in my local authority, and we communicate all the time on it. We're talking about if there are increases, and at the moment with the infection control money that we're being allocated, who's received it, who hasn't received it, what it can be spent on, and just, you know, sharing that so we can push back. And I know our local authority has just shared information about what that money can be spent on. So I went onto Facebook, onto Jonathon's group, and I shared that with all those nearly 3,000 members, and, you know, just let them know what my local authority is paying, because at least then, if their councils don't want to pay that money, they've got something to push back on and use.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's that case of because the NHS and health is quite a integrated body in itself. It's got different parts to it, but it does talk. With social care, we have got to come together. I think that's a really moot point to say that within our areas, these Facebook groups, they might seem sort of, you know, Facebook, you think you're just chatting with friends, and it is a bit of that, but also coming together and thinking, is there some kind of joint response that we could have to we could bring to our local authority to say, especially when I think people are suffering from voids in older people's services as well. They can say, come with a challenge to say, we are going to fail if we don't get more support, because then it's their job to then work and speak to the government and feed that information up. So definitely, I think people need to, because we've not really necessarily needed to work together like this before. So it all seems a bit scary and a bit new. So maybe in terms of the future of social care and change, we just need to all come together in our areas, or like what you're doing with the petition, and just say, this is what we feel needs to change. Okay, before we get into anything more meaty, just another shout out for people to please put your comments, put your ideas, thoughts in, and we're gonna do another one of those 3 ways. We're gonna bring Jonathon in as well and get chatting some more. So Jonathon, hello again. So he's back.
Good to see you.
So you've been listening to what we've been talking about, and we're coming on to workforce. How do you think we should professionalize the workforce?
I mean, ironically, there was a government study done last year on exactly this. Like most government studies, they sort of put a review, probably costing thousands, if not more, and it doesn't seem to go anywhere. I couldn't agree more. I mean, you know, that's what tonight's about. I think we can't do enough for our sector to professionalize these amazing people that are doing a job which is just so incredible. And you know, when you think we're all, if we're graced to grow old, and a lot of people don't have that honor or privilege, but you know, if you're privileged to be able to grow old, I'd love to be in a place such as, you know, Mark's place, or certainly Birkdale Park, where you've got the most professional, the most diligent and deeply caring, compassionate people looking after you. I've never seen such. It is closest to a profession that I've ever seen, because these days now it's not just about, you know, dare I say, wiping bums. That's the typical stereotype. That's what we do. You wipe bums, and it can be incredibly derogatory. And you know, people sort of lack the sort of self-esteem and reward for that. And yet it's the exact opposite. It is now so technical when it comes to the technology which is rolling. You know, about half of providers these days have moved to electronic care planning. You've then got, you know, yesteryear, a nurse, you know, particularly in our sector, might be the only one that did observations or catheterization or wound care or pads or continence assessments. But I can tell you now, all of that is done by very well competent, highly professional senior carers who are just another carer. That's how they'd be described, just another carer. And yet they're doing things that 75, if not 10 years ago, was only the domain of registered nurses, because the demands now on the organisation are so huge. So the time is right, and certainly I think that Mark's you know, registration and his petition is absolutely brilliant, and so you know, I want to support that all the way.
Yeah, I want to pick up the point you made about, and I'm glad you mentioned it. We're actually quite a professional industry anyway, in this whole concept of just doing routine physical personal care is just a myth, because I don't know about any of you, but we had that training, online training, which the government said they're going to give us, and I can't remember who provided it now. Was it Public Health England or someone? And it was online training to do with the infection control. And I had managers come to me saying, well, this is a bit late in the day. COVID started like 2 months ago, for one. And secondly, it's so basic. We've been doing more than that anyway. We've been teaching our care staff a lot more than that anyway. A bit worried if we weren't doing that in the first place. So there's this real disconnect between understanding what we actually already do. And I don't understand why they're so green on it. They're obviously not speaking to the right people, or speaking to managers who on the ground already got business continuity plans for influenza and all of these other things that we do as business as usual. Do you find this, that advice for the care sector is quite basic, Mark, as well?
I do, and I think the advice, I mean, obviously more so for learning disabilities, just isn't there. A lot of it is aimed at elderly, and I appreciate there's probably a lot more elderly services out there than those learning disability ones. But definitely since the pandemic, we've seen the guidance changes so often, sometimes daily, and just trying to keep up to date with that is a job in itself. And you know, I think they need to sit down, like I said earlier, with some of these providers, with some of these managers that want to make change happen, and listen to what we're saying about what guidance could look like. And actually, like you said, we've already got contingency plans in place for if we get influenza or anything else that comes through the door. So actually, the virus is slightly different, but you know, it wasn't a whole new ball game. And I mean, for my contingency plan, I just backed it off the back of one of our other ones. But
yeah, absolutely. So just going into some questions now. Somebody has asked, Nicholas has asked about, where do you see the future of social care? I know we kind of touched this when we were thinking about doing this live stream. So, you know, what kind of support do you think the government needs to be giving us? I know you've both touched on that a bit more, but maybe Jonathon, if you've got any other ideas. We've lost Mark. You might need to start us off on that one.
No, that's okay. I would love to see more partnership working. I think there's so many services out there doing the same thing and just redesigning form after form, and we've probably all got 1,000 different care plan layouts. We've all probably got 1,000 falls risk assessments, and I would love it that the CQC, who are obviously governing us, would just take more control and say, this is the form you need for falls, roll with this. And then when it's reviewed, have a team that is reviewing them internally and then shared to all the providers. Because I don't think we would go to the NHS and go to different trusts and they would have completely different forms. They've probably got one form that is unified across all of the NHS. And I think it's a bit like the electronic care plan. And I mean, I'm still on paper because I'm so worried about going with one company and then, you know, a year down the line having to move it all one to another. But there's no, you know, you can't share the information between the two. I think I would love to see the CQC be more vocal. They've got a huge platform. But I mean, definitely through the pandemic, I mean, I've been disappointed not to see them, you know, sharing bits and pieces, voicing concerns around the testing, and still now, you know, a lot of the care homes have had whole home testing, but you know, we're dying to have more testing because, you know, that was 2-3 weeks ago, and a lot of us could be asymptomatic carrying that virus still, and I would love to see them pushing for more. I think they've definitely got the platform, they've got the contacts to do that, but I don't know why they haven't done.
It's really interesting, the point about CQC, because, and about forms, because that's one of my frustrations. I mean, we've got so much going on and I would like to have a lot more standardization of our policies and procedures and forms. And I just feel like some of us are sharing it on Facebook and social media, and my managers are saying, oh, I've got this from this group. And I mentioned it on one of the calls that I hold with care providers in our area, and the CCG, the partnership that they've got going on as part of the STPs, said that they would share a couple of forms with us and let us, if we could let them know what forms we need. But absolutely, I mean, when you're dealing with everything else, so then sit down and do a whole heap of forms. You can buy a lot of them off the shelf or whatever, but they're never quite good enough. And it's just something simple that's safe that we could all just use. It just makes no sense to just have to all do our own stuff and spend, you know, hours or especially days or doing it. I mean, it's just so inefficient.
Yeah, I think that comes from years ago where there was such competition with different care services that everybody, you had a form and you were like, that's mine and I'm not going to share it, and you weren't allowed to share it. Whereas now I think, you know, like today, for example, somebody was looking for a visitor guidance and I just sent it to the WhatsApp team. I was like, here, take it, change it, amend it. If you don't like it, bin it, do whatever you want with it. But, you know, I'm not precious about a form because I always think at the end of the day, that one form means that that person who needs it can spend more time on the floor looking after somebody. It means less time sat in an office in front of a computer getting frustrated that you don't know how to use Word or Excel or whatever the problem might be. And it just speeds up the process. And actually it helps in the long run because then we're all using the same forms and it's more unified, which is, yeah, what we obviously want to aim to.
I definitely think that there's a risk of us going back to C-Sky when it was before CQC, where people are happy when you've got a whole heap of forms about COVID rather than thinking about the person-centered care that people are getting. I definitely, oh, he's back. Jonathan is back. Hello.
Hey. I love internet.
I wanted just about to bring up CQC actually, because someone did ask something about CQC. And I was on a call, slightly different but similar today, and I was listening to UKHCA, which is the providers support organisation for home care rather than care homes. And someone was talking about whether CQC will actually, I don't know if it was that call, might be something else. Anyway, a lot of calls today. Will it actually continue in its current form? Because, you know, Mark was just talking about why aren't we getting more support? But I know that you say, Jonathan, we've got to understand that CQC isn't our friend, it is our regulator. Do you think CQC should just have a different role, especially with COVID? A lot of people have said, well, where has CQC been for us?
It's been very difficult. I mean, you know, you only have to look at the Winterbourne scenarios and scandals. I mean, they get a lot of criticism and almost damned if they do and damned if they don't. We do need a big brother. We do need a big brother, big sister, call it what you want. You need someone to regulate, because sadly there are a lot of providers out there, more than we would like to consider, that are in it purely for profit. They're not like Mark or I or those amazing providers that are after looking after their gorgeous residents. There are a lot of people who are just purely for profit. And so you do need a strong arm regulator going there, and they're not initially your friend. I haven't got an issue with that. The issue I do have, though, is that the lack of consistency which you do have. I mean, we're talking about massive lack of consistency between inspectors, possibly even in the same area, the same region. And the other issue is that they are experiencing, and they're seeing the good, the bad, the ugly. They're seeing the most incredible best practice. Well, there needs to be some sort of repository for that. There needs to be some sort of resource for that, because in their current guise, it's almost as if they can see, they're allowed to watch the car crash develop in front of them before they then step in and persecute you and prosecute you with all of their legal regulations and powers that they have. And I just feel that there needs to be some sort of go-between. I've got to say, though, and this is where these Facebook groups do come in, and we're seeing a new side to the regulator, which is where we've got inspectors in the group. They've been there because they've been managers initially, and then they said, look, actually, I've got a great job now with CQC and sort of, poacher term gamekeeper. I'm now going to sort of go on the other side of the fence. I said, that's absolutely fine. There's a place for you in the inner circle. It's not a problem at all. Contribute, and just, because I'd rather we're completely transparent. And they do feedback through to me very discreetly where things are changing. And almost, they themselves can't say, look, as an inspector, this is what you should be doing. But they can through bodies like the care managers in a circle, where they can say, look, this is where things are changing. You need to, one of the things at the moment is some of the inspections are going to become more focused inspections, where they're not going to come in a massive compliance inspection. They're just going to be looking at a particular area. It could be mental capacity or something like that. And so the future is going to be electronic. And so if providers haven't gone electronic, they need to start considering it pretty fast. And so
there you go, Mark. You've got your. You need to go electronic, even if you don't want. You were out. He hasn't quite.
Bite the bullet, Mark. Bite it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I hear what both of you are saying, and I think, Mark, your point about it's difficult to go electronic is a good point. I know we have, but I look at some of the electronic stuff that we have, and I'm like, we're doubling up, because we've got the electronic care plans, then we've got the paper ones because they're that much more detailed, or that's the way that staff probably engage with them, or if we're involving the people we support, that's what they want. They want to feel the paper, especially LD services. They want to look through it themselves and maybe put a red marker over things they don't like. It's difficult. Yeah, I've had that before. I did a policy and I said to one of the people we support, can you help me with it? I got my grammar all wrong. I got the spelling all wrong. So I was embarrassed. But sometimes that kind of stuff is not great with technology. And I know CQC are trying to do the whole co-production, well, they call it co-production, but more like consultation, I think, stuff around where things should go. But I don't know whether it needs to be a bit deeper, and we need to just involve more people on the ground, and we need to do, I don't see the big deal about sending out a survey to everyone on Twitter who's a registered manager and getting their views in, and it's a work, but it's like, just get more views in. But maybe that's another conversation altogether. Okay, let's have a look about more questions. Yeah, more people saying that a lot needs to change, and things are kind of going in different directions, and things need to look different. What do you think about different organisations working together more in terms of like maybe home care working with care homes, working with supported living, so you have like a whole sector-wide collaboration around what we're doing? Would that make sense?
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why. I mean, I started the North and South Sefton Care Home Group, which actually, although it talks about care homes, it also involves domiciliary care as well. And we have a joint meeting which involves the Acute Trust, CCG, local authority. For exactly that reasons, we had to be more joined up, and there was no representation across Sefton at all, which was absolutely abysmal. I mean, that was absolutely shocking. So there was no independent voice for social care. And as Mark says, there's some good people in local authorities, don't get me wrong. But I mean, if there's an opportunity to pick you off individually, then that's what's going to happen. because there's too much money involved and there's too much power. So for that reason, we then came together as a formed group, and it's been very successful. Luckily, we formed it last year, and that has grown over the COVID period. We've now got a WhatsApp group, and so joint letters I write on behalf of the as chair of the group, and we send them into local authority, and they're sort of duty bound. They have to respond to that body. So you can't collaborate enough with enough organisations and people, because it's one big problem out there, and so we need lots of individual solutions to that very complex challenge.
What do you think, Mark?
Oh, well, I welcome any kind of joint working. I think so many times we've seen residents leave one service, whether it's because they're actually moving from a care home into supported living because they can be a lot more independent. But likewise, they might be going from supported living and something might have broken down and they're moving into a care home. But there's just no, in a lot of services, no kind of sharing of that care plan. And I mean, I know for me, if somebody's leaving my service for whatever reason, I'm happy to, here's the care plan, read it. I'll send you a copy, I'll email, scan, whatever, take that care plan, keep it as your own. I'll send you the hard copy via email and you can just have it. So all you've got to do is change it, print it, and you've got, because I think at the end of the day, it's only benefiting those residents. It's not, I don't see why so many companies are like, you're not having a copy of that care plan, because it only hinders the care that you can give to somebody.
100%. I'm noticing we've only got 5 minutes left, so if anyone does have any burning questions, then do put them in the chat. I also wanted to talk about the training. So we did say, we are very skilled in what we do, and Jonathon pointed out that we're doing tasks that would normally be done by community nurse or community health workers. What we have at the minute, of course, is the, what is it? I don't even know what it's called now. T-levels, diplomas. And Mark, you talked to me before about the way that those had changed. I know when I started, when I was first trying to get registered, it was MVQs. Is there a problem with these things changing the way they are, and what are required of them so often, and the fact that some people don't share those between employers? Mark, maybe start us off on that one.
I definitely think there's an issue. I mean, like you said, I started, it was an MVQ. They then changed to a QCF, and now they've adapted again, and now there's an endpoint assessment and you're given a pass, merit or distinction grade. And I kind of think, in a few years' time, what's it going to look like? And I did my level 5, and now there's also the expectations for the level 7, and the goalposts change the whole time. And I think that doesn't help the industry, because no sooner as you got your qualification, you think, oh yeah, I'm here with my level 5 or my 3 or whatever you've just achieved, there's something else just popping up that then makes that qualification look null and void. And I know when I did my 5, they were then like, well, if you had done that a few years ago, it now wouldn't be eligible for a manager's post. And I don't think that really helps either. And I think that spurred me on to get my management qualification, because that's never changed. It's been the same since I did that when I was 20, and it's not changed at all since then. Oh, Sophie, we can't hear you, sorry.
There we go. I need to unmute. This is what happens. I get so engaged with what people are saying, I forget to unmute. But yeah, no, that's the kind of problem that we have, in that we get so, once you get to management level, you know what you're looking for, you know what you've got, and that's sustainable. But along the way, it kind of changes, and you're not quite sure what people need. Jonathon, do you think we need to standardize our training qualifications in social care a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I agree entirely with Mark. This whole level 5, level 7. I think there needs to be also some sort of standardization when it comes to the training, because there's some real specialties when it comes to care workers. Because there are so many domains now. You could specialize in end of life. So similar to being a nurse, you could be palliative care nurse, you could be. But in the same way, the caring profession is incredibly specialized as well. And so you could go into nice of end of life, wound care. Dementia is a huge area. Nutrition and hydration. These are real specialties. With a lot of academic background to them, and obviously some background and an experience on the ground as well. So there's lots that could be done, but I think certainly the start is trying to standardise this and give people an option of specialising in some of these care roles, because that would again sort of enhance the agenda of professionalisation of the sector.
Great. And also, I think in that process, definitely engaging in the sector, with the sector to find out what that should look like. Good. Okay. Well, I think we've really covered a lot, and I've really appreciated your input in this. I noticed that there was quite a few sort of screenshots that I wanted to share for you, Jonathon, and for you to talk through. So I'm going to do that in a minute. But for now, I think we're going to say thank you so much, Mark, for joining us. And as I said before, please do find his petition, do follow it. I'm just going to mute you for a second because you're a bit of feedback, and make sure that you do engage with his petition and you sign it, because as far as I understand with these petitions, if you have over 100,000 signatures, that means that they have to discuss that petition in Parliament. But I did contact somebody, my local MP, about the petitions, and she's on, I think, the petition select committee or something. And she said because there are so many during COVID, they are actually, you have to get more than 100,000 signatures in order for even that to be discussed. So because there's some petitions with 200,000 signatures. So keep on signing it, keep on sharing it. It's in the description box. And it is really looking about seeing frontline care workers as professionals. So please do get involved. And thank you very much for joining us, Mark.
No, thank you very much.
Sophie, I'm going to have to go because I'm obviously on my live at 8.
Yes, you have. Okay, well, let's forget about the screenshots. Can you do a little jingle before you go?
Little jingle, right? Give me 2 takes. I've just got my ukulele because I'm in the kitchen now.
Oh, sorry. He's off to get his ukulele. While he's doing that, then I'll show you some of the screenshots. So yeah, again, he's been doing a lot of campaigning, and there's follow him on Twitter. We also have some slides of some of the inspirational speeches he's been doing. Okay, he's back.
There we go. Right.
Okay, here we go. It's fantastic.
Right. Okay, good. So this is when you're smiling. So here we go. When you're smiling, whole world smiles with you. When you're laughing, sun comes shining through. But when you're crying, you bring on the rain, so stop your sighing. Be happy again, so keep on smiling, because when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
Woo!
There you go.
Thank you so much. That was great. I'm going to let you get to your group now. So thank you so much for joining us. That was great. Take care.
See you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Oh, that was fantastic from Jonathon. Who would have thought we'd have live music on a live stream? Wonderful. And as someone has said, good vibes, which we always need on a Thursday, rainy Thursday afternoon. So that's it from us. That is our live stream for Wednesday. I just encourage you again to sign, subscribe, like, all of that, support us, share. Tomorrow, of course, we have the care minister in Labour Party, so shadow care minister, and there we go. So Liz Kendall, and of course, she has some great views on how social care might need to change in the future. I will absolutely be bringing up some of the issues that we've been talking about today, the petition and everything else. So tune in to see what she has to say. And of course, you can have the chat extremely busy. I'll be putting up your questions as I have been doing tonight to her. So definitely recommend you getting on your own Facebook groups, encouraging people to listen in and engage tomorrow evening, not 7, 6 o'clock, so slightly earlier because she has to get away. So thank you everyone so much for joining in with us, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. Take care. Bye.